tell many heartwarming stories and embellish them to make them even more touching. Or you can just take a case from life, and it will turn out to be much more incredible than the most fictional story. Olga went to the hospital because her daughter had a high fever, and on top of that, she started vomiting. It was impossible to stay at home and self-medicate. Mother and daughter had to be hospitalized. The first day Olga was so worried about the child's condition that she did not even look around. But after a day Rishka's condition began to stabilize, and Olga went out into the corridor to call her husband. While the operator was putting the call through, her gaze fell on the next room. There, behind the transparent door, was a baby boy. He was not yet a year old. He was standing on the floor, and his onesies were practically sliding off the baby. It was obvious that they were old, and the elastic band was not holding the material well. The boy saw a strange aunt and cried. Olga came into the room, corrected the baby's clothes and tried to calm the boy down. The mother must have gone out somewhere, and the child was afraid to be alone. But a nurse's stern voice sounded behind her back. "You can't come in here." "Yes, I just saw that the baby is alone, and where is his mother?" The woman began to justify herself. "He doesn't have a mother. She was deprived of her parental rights." This is a waiver room. These words sounded stricter than a verdict. Then came the sad story of how Mitya's mother had come from an orphanage, had given birth early, and was not ready for motherhood. In addition, the girl was addicted to alcohol, so she often left the baby home alone. He starved and cried. Neighbors could not indifferently watch what was happening, knocked on the door, but no one opened it. Then they called the law enforcement. That is how the child ended up in the hospital. His condition was serious. Mitya was exhausted and there were scratches on his body. Olga froze at what she heard. She could not imagine how she could hurt such a small child, how she could leave him alone at home, how she could make him starve. From that moment on she began to visit Mitya frequently, asking her husband to bring clothes and toys for the baby. She grew attached to the little boy who found himself alone in the world. Alone and unneeded. It was time to be discharged. Both Alia and her daughter were very happy to be able to return to their native apartment. The only thing that really upset her was that she would never see Mitya again. The parting was hard. The boy was holding out his hands, waiting to be taken away as well. But it was impossible. Although Olga became attached to the child, she was a stranger to him, at least to the state. All night long Olga could not find room for herself. She was spinning, thinking a lot, and keeping her husband awake. Her husband also became sensitive to the fate of the little boy, and suggested that Olga go to see the child. So it was decided. Maybe they would be able to find someone close to the boy, and they would agree to take him. Olga entered the hospital, and asked the nurse to let her see Mitya. The nurse did not object. She showed her where the shoe covers and gown were and went about her own business. Olga and her husband went into the room. Mitya was sitting on the crib, holding a teddy bear in his hands. When he saw the guests, he smiled and held out his arms to them. Only the boy approached, not Alia, but her husband. "What are you standing there for? Take him in your arms," said the woman. The husband did so, and the boy hugged him tightly by the neck. He hugged him, as if he were not a stranger's uncle, but his own father. The moment was so touching, that Olga could barely restrain herself from bursting into tears. Her husband hugged the boy tightly and turned away. Olga realized that he was crying too. It was the first time she had ever seen such a thing. And a few minutes later her husband said, "Alia, let's adopt him." We had to spend some time on the paperwork. But we were able to take the baby, because he had no other relatives except his mother. Mitya became his son in a family, where they loved him dearly. He is now 7 years old, and in first grade. And Olga and her husband are expecting their third child. And they love both their son and daughter very much. And Mitya asks to name his little sister Mashinka, like the girl from the fairy tale. That is how Olga's fate was formed. As they say, there was no happiness but unhappiness helped. If she had not been in hospital she would have never known that there is a boy Mitya who needs her mother very much. And what do you think? Did Olga and her husband do the right thing, taking the boy? What would you have done in their place?